Today I'm going to go over some Unit 4 Lesson 1 practice problems. Look at this first problem. This problem asks which statement regarding the diagram is true. You are given different statements. The easiest way to solve this type of problem is to go through each statement and see if it's true. The first one says the measure of angle WXY is equal to or congruent to the measure of YXZ. So we want to identify those two angles. So here we have WXY and that angle, and then we have the measure of YXZ. Well, the only way that these two angles could be equal to each other is if we had an indication that one of them was a right angle. Otherwise, they could not be identical to each other. If we had an indication of a right angle, it would look something like this. However, we did not have an indication of the right angle, so therefore, that is not the correct answer. Let's look at the next one. This one says the measure of WXY is greater than the measure of YZX. Well, as you can see here, YZX is an acute angle, meaning less than 90 degrees, while WXY actually looks like it's more of an obtuse angle. Therefore, this is incorrect, and in fact, in order for this statement to be true, we would have to have a symbol that looks like that. Let's look at the next problem, or next statement, sorry. This statement says measure WXY plus the measure YXZ when added together equal 180 degrees. Well, this is in fact true because these two angles are supplementary to each other. We know these two angles are supplementary to each other because they share that same line. Therefore, if we were to add those two angles together, we would need to get 180 degrees, thus making C our correct answer. Let's go ahead and move on to the next problem. This problem asks, what angle measure is equal to the sum of the measure of BAC and BCA? So what we want to do is identify BAC Actually, let me clean up that line. Actually, we can indicate it by just doing this. BAC and BCA what this is telling us is we're trying to figure out what angle measure is equal to the sum of these two angles. So, therefore, we would have to add BAC plus BCA, or as we have it written here, angle A plus angle C. These are relatively the same. Therefore, what we want to do is identify which angle would result or be congruent to the sum of that angle. Well, what we know is that the exterior angle of a triangle is equal to the sum of its two remote interior angles. Therefore, we would want to find the exterior angle that considers angle A and angle C remote interior angles, and that is this angle right here. So when we add these two angles together, angle A and angle C, we get this angle. Well, now we want to identify what this angle actually is, and the way we could do that is by identifying where it lies, and it lies at EBC or CBE. It could be read either way, and so thus we have B as our answer. Let's look at the next problem. This problem asks, which statements are always true regarding the diagram? Select three options. So, the easiest way to go about this problem again is to try each of these different options and see if they apply here. So here we have angle 5 and angle 3 are equal to angle 4. Well, angle 4 is actually adjacent to angle 3, thus that would not be true. In order for this statement to be true, we would have to have adjacent to the measure of angle 1. Therefore, that is not a true statement. Let's look at our other statements. This statement states the measure of angle 3 plus the measure of angle 4 plus the measure of angle 5 is equal to 180. Well, that's not something we can reasonably conclude from this. Actually, if we were to add the measure of angle 3 plus the measure of angle 4, we would already get 180 degrees. So by adding angle 5, we would not get 180 degrees, but rather we get something greater than 180 degrees. And so we know that that's not our answer. Let's look at the next one. The next one states that the measure of angle 5 and the measure of angle 6 is equal to 180 degrees. Well, those two angles are in fact supplementary angles. They share that same line, so if we were to add those together, they would in fact equal to 180 degrees. Let's look at the next one. The measure of angle 2 and the measure of angle 3 is equal to the measure of angle 6. Okay, well, let's look for the measure of angle 2, the measure of angle 3, and what do we know about these? Well, we know that these are two remote interior angles, and thus we know that when we add those together, we can get our exterior angle. However, we would have to get a specific exterior angle, and that is angle 6. Because angle 2 and 3 are non-adjacent to angle 6, and so that is in fact a true statement. Let's look at the next problem. This problem states the measure of angle 2, angle 3, and angle 5 is equal to 180 degrees. Well, we learned that the sum of all the interior angles is equal to 180 degrees, and so that is in fact our answer. Thus, we have selected three options, and so we can move on. Let's look at this next problem. Which represents an exterior angle of triangle ABF? So we have our triangle ABF, and we're looking for which of these represents an exterior angle. Well, the easiest way to go about this is to identify each of these angles and see if they are in fact exterior angles. So we have BAD. Well, as we can see, BAD has a little bit of an interior angle space, and so that would not be our answer choice. Now let's look at AFE. Same thing, we can see here that we have a little bit of an interior angle space, and so that would not be our answer choice. Let's look at this next one. CAD. Well, what we see here is something that is a non-example of an exterior angle. More specifically, it is this line right here that is a non-example of that exterior angle. Remember that in order to create exterior angles, we must extend the sides of the triangle out. This does not mean we extend the vertices out like we see here, where vertices A, where vertices A, oh my goodness, A is extended out. We need only the sides to be extended out, so in fact, that is not an exterior angle. Now we're left with one answer choice, so we can select it, but we can also double check to see if it's true. So we're looking at CAB. Well, as you can see here, the entire D of CAB is an exterior angle, and thus our answer is D. Let's move on. This question asks, what is the value of x? Well, what did we learn? We learned that if we want to find the measure of an exterior angle when we're given two remote interior angles, we can just add the two remote interior angles together to find the exterior angles. Therefore, we can add 35 plus 58 to give us the measure of angle x. And so I'll plug that into my calculator. 35 plus 58 gives me 93. And thus the measure, or the value x, angle x, is 93. Wonderful, let's move on. Here we have another type of problem. This problem says the measure of angle x is 34. The measure of angle z is 26. What is the measure of angle y? Well, we learned that the sum of all the interior angles of a triangle is equal to 180 degrees. Therefore, if we add angle x plus angle z plus angle y, we must get 180. So we can substitute what we already know. Let us see, 34 plus 26 gives us 60. Equals 180. We want to go ahead and subtract 60 from both sides. And so we see that the measure of angle y is equal to 120, and thus we can select D as our answer. Let's go ahead and look at another problem. Here we have another problem, but this one's just a little bit different. In this problem, we're being asked to identify the measure of angle x. But in fact, we're being asked what statement about the value of x is true. Well, what did we learn? Well, we learned that the measure of an exterior angle must be greater than the measure of its two non-adjacent angles. That means x must be greater than 38 and x must be greater than 39. We also learned that from this we can solve for the measure of angle x. But in this instance we don't have to, because we're not looking for what x is equal to, but rather what x is greater than or less than. Well, as we can see here, A would be our answer because it matches this statement. This statement, on the other hand, says x is less than 39, but we see here that x must be greater than 39, and so we know that that's on our answer choice. Same goes for all these other ones, because what we're looking for is which statement is true, and we've already identified a true statement, and so we can go ahead and move on. Here's another question. This question asks, what is the value of x? Well, what do we know about supplementary angles? Well, first of all, we have two supplementary angles here. We know these are supplementary because they share a common line, and all straight angles are equal to 180 degrees. Well, supplementary angles are equal to 180 degrees, so what we can do is, add those together equal to 180 degrees. So we're looking for the value of k, so we don't have to solve for a specific angle, but we just need to find the value of k. Well, the way that we would do that is combine like terms. So let me just write this out like this so it's easier for us to look at. Okay, like terms. 3, so 6x, 6x plus, 6 equals 180. We can go ahead and subtract 6 from both sides. And I'm putting this in my calculator. So I have 6x equals 174. I'm going to divide by 6. And that is equal to k is equal to 29. And thus our answer is B. So in case you are not sure what we did, we added them together to equal to 180 degrees because they are supplementary angles. Then we combined our like terms. So what are like terms in this instance are this 5k plus k gives us 6k. Our negative 3 plus 9, which gives us 6. Then we want to subtract 6 from both sides to isolate the k, divide 6 from both sides to isolate the k. And then we get k equals to 24. Let's look at another problem. This problem asks, what is the value of x? Well, what do we know here? Well, we know we have one exterior angle and it's two non-adjacent angles or remote interior angles. So we know that we have 45x is equal to 25x plus, and I'll go ahead and put these in parentheses just so they're easier to see, 75x. So I want to solve for the value of x. So again, I'll just combine like terms, but I'll make it easier for us. Okay, combine my like terms. That gives me 26x. Okay, and then I have plus 75. I'm going to go ahead and subtract 26x because I want to isolate these two. So 45x. 45 minus 26, 19x. So 19x equals 57. Now I'm going to divide 19 on both sides. Which tells me that x is equal to 3. So x is equal to 3, and thus I have my answer. Okay. Let's go ahead and move on to our last problem that we're going to be looking at. This one asks, what is the value of x? Well, the easiest way to go about this problem is it's going to take a couple steps, but to fill in what we already know. So what do we already know? Well, we know that 130 is one of our angles, and we know that it is adjacent to one of our interior angles of our triangle. And so if we know that when we add those two together we get 180, well then what we could do is, let's say this is the measure of angle 1. So angle 1 plus 130 must equal to 180. So I'll subtract 130 from both sides. And I know that the measure of angle 1 is equal to 50. So I've found out that this is equal to 50. Okay. Now I can do the same thing from this other angle over here. So again, 180 minus 134 gives me 46. So I'll actually do this in a different color just so it's easier to see. 46. Okay. So now what? So now what I can go ahead and do is solve for my missing angle, specifically this interior angle right here, by adding these angles together and seeing what gives me 180. So 50 plus 46 plus my missing angle, whatever that angle is, will give me 180. So I'm going to do 50 plus 46, which is 96, plus my missing angle will give me 180. I want to subtract 96 from both sides. 180 minus 96 gives me 84. So my missing angle is equal to 84. So I'll put that there. Okay, and now I still want to find x. Well, what do I know about the relationship between that angle I just found and x? Well, when I add them together, they must equal 180. So I'll take 180 equals, let's say this is angle 3. Plus my missing angle will give me 180. So I'll plug in what I already know. Minus 84, minus 84. What does that give me? 180 minus 84 gives me 96. So x is equal to 96, and thus I found my answer. Okay? So basically, you just use all your different angle relationships in order to solve for your missing angle, which is angle x. Another way that you could have went about solving this problem is once you know your two interior angles or your remote interior angles, your non-adjacent angles from that exterior angle, you can just add those two together. So 50 plus 46 gives me 96. So there's multiple ways you can solve this problem, but ideally you need to find as many angle pairs as possible, angle relationships as possible. Go ahead and solve for missing angles, and thus you'll be able to solve for the angle that you need. I hope this was helpful, and I know you're going to be successful in your independent practice and when these appear on your Unit 4 exam.